Welcome back to the story of my ancestors. In today's video, we'll continue the story of Harry Rowley and Mabel Hickox. The photos of Harry and Mabel's courtship all feature photos with Harry's sisters and mother and with Mabel's friends. Here we have a photo featuring the latest beachwear attire of 1921 at Hammonasset State Park on the Connecticut shore. And Harry and Mabel were together, but they also had chaperones with them. Here is Mabel with her good friend, Rose Carini, often referred to by my mother Betty as Auntie Peg, and with Harry's sister, Catherine. Now, the photos of that courtship also include a lot of Sunday afternoon drives, and you see them often in church attire or just nice dressly in summer attire, traveling throughout the state of Connecticut and up into Massachusetts. Now, that tradition of Sunday drives, my mother Betty explained it very well. Harry worked peddling milk 6 days a week, and Sunday was the day off. And very often after church, even in later years, Harry would go for Sunday drives. Here, Harry and Mabel are at Mount Tom State Park in the northwest corner of Connecticut. Now, Betty found some letters that Mabel had written to Harry that she hadn't remembered seeing before, and it really was interesting to watch her reaction to them as she saw both the tenderness and humor of her mother, something she may have not known well as a child. So I'd like to read an excerpt from one of those letters just before Harry and Mabel's wedding in 1922. Monday p.m. Dearest boy, only 6 hours since I saw you, and I'm writing already. I was afraid you might need that $8 right away. Graham was surprised to see me. She knew I said I'd be home this soon, but she really didn't think I would be here. I wonder what gave her that idea. Now, please don't forget to look up those addresses. Try to find out if Mrs. Nordstrom's name really is Matilda. I think I'll start to pack my trunk now. Lots of love, Mabel. Now, as Mabel was preparing for the wedding, which took place in Colchester on October 14th, 1922, she was also preparing to move her grandmother, Sarah Kenny Hickox, up to Newington to share the front of the house with Harry's mother, Catherine. Harry and Mabel would live in a small L built onto the back of the farmhouse as they began their life together. Now, Harry and Mabel were married in a simple ceremony surrounded by family and friends in Colchester, Connecticut. Here is the one photo we have from the wedding. There are no professional photographs or large group photographs, just this one. But we do have a number of photos from their honeymoon. That, of course, was a road trip. They traveled up the Mohawk Trail in Massachusetts, up into Vermont and New Hampshire, before settling down to life together in Newington. Mabel continued to teach for at least a couple more years after their wedding, and Harry continued to grow his dairy business and expand that as they began their life together. Harry and Mabel had hoped to have a big family like the one that Harry grew up in. But after multiple miscarriages, they were overjoyed with the birth of their daughter, Mabel Elizabeth, known as Betty, on October 17th, 1925. The photos confirm what Betty remembers, that it was a happy childhood and that she was loved by both of her parents. Her mother, Mabel, had had rheumatic fever before meeting Harry, and it had left her with a heart condition. Betty remembers her mother as tiring easily, though not sickly, as Betty described it, until Betty's teenage years. Now, Betty grew up as an only child, but she was seldom lonely. She was always surrounded by family, as we see here in this picture. Mabel is holding Betty in the center of the picture, and the Hosfords, Aunt Catherine and Uncle Clarence, holding Norman, are in the left-hand side of the picture. And then just above Mabel is Charlotte, Eddie, and her children, Frank and Stella, are down in the front row. And then right next to Charlotte, hiding behind Grandmother Rowley, is Sally, the youngest of Harry's sisters, who often served as a babysitter. And of course, Grandmother Rowley and Great-Grandmother Hickox lived in the front part of the house. And events like this family picnic were regular occurrences. You'll notice on the far right that Sally's new beau, Bob Bertini, has been added to the Hosford Eddie Rowley clan. One of the treasures we discovered in going through Betty's collection of memorabilia from her family were several diaries that Mabel had kept during the early to mid 1930s. Now, those diaries were full of lots of mundane entries, the weather for the day, and days she mopped the floor, and errands she ran, and those kinds of things. But in it, you got a real glimpse of what Harry and Mabel's life was like. I found particularly interesting the entries about Harry. Now, it was all in code that my mother, Betty, had to help me decipher. There were lots of entries about peddling and collecting. And I learned that when it said H peddled NB, it meant that Harry had delivered milk in New Britain that morning. And when H collected MH, it meant that in the afternoon or evening, Harry had gone back out to collect monies from those customers in Maple Hill. And so those codes were all through those diary entries. And Harry was actively involved in building that milk business during the 20s and 30s. And as he expanded that delivery, he had to expand the operation. In this photo, we see the old milk room that had a semi-automatic process for pasteurizing, cleaning bottles and filling them. But by 1930, Harry had committed to building a new dairy building that we knew growing up and that you see here in this picture. And in this dairy building, they were able to automatically, on an automatic line, clean and sterilize the quart glass bottles that were used, automatically fill them, and had a walk-in cooler to be able to refrigerate the milk. And so the operation could continue to grow and expand. A couple of events in the 1930s greatly affected Harry and Mabel. Mabel's grandmother, Sarah Kinney Hickox, died in May of 1933. She had been significant in raising Mabel and had shared the front half of their home since Harry and Mabel's wedding. And then in November of 1934, Harry's mother, Catherine Clark Rowley, also died. Now, after their deaths, Harry and Mabel began to transform the old farmhouse, shown here in the blizzard of 1934, into a modern single-family residence. They changed the roof line, added a modern kitchen with an eat-in breakfast nook, an office for Harry, and 2 modern bathrooms. And there's so many other details and stories from Mabel's diary that could be told. Stories of her love for gardening, as is shown here in the rose bushes and arbor behind their home, or of the friends she had that she called the girls and that she participated in activities with at the Congregational Church and at the Grange and in the PTA, or of the road trips that Harry and Mabel took with friends and relatives, and Harry's other love of his life in the 1940s, his Lincoln Zephyr. But all of that would change as Mabel's health began to deteriorate in the 1940s. By the fall of 1943, when Betty went off to the University of Connecticut for college, Mabel had gotten weaker and needed full-time help. Betty remembers well the phone call that she got in November of 1945 saying she needed to come home, that her mother wasn't doing well. Mabel died early in the morning on the day after Thanksgiving, November 23rd, 1945. She died of heart failure related to her rheumatic fever. She's buried in the Newington Center Cemetery next to the Congregational Church that she had loved and been a part of. In the next video, we'll discuss Harry's life from this point going forward, his marriage to Ellen Hastings, his sale of the dairy to Frank Eddy, and the life he enjoyed as a gentleman retiree until his very unexpected death in December of 1957. Until next time, may you always hold precious memories of family close to your heart.